Some birthdays mark celebrations, others mark endings. Mine marked the day I discovered who truly loved me and who had been waiting for me to die. Let me take you back to that morning. My name is Patricia Young. I'm 62 years old and I live in Perth, Australia. The sun was streaming through the curtains of my bedroom when I opened my eyes on what should have been a joyful day, my birthday. But there was no joy left in me, only exhaustion, only the heavy weight of survival. 6 months earlier, I'd been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The doctors had been cautiously optimistic, but the treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy had stolen my appetite, my energy, and finally, my hair. I'd watched in the mirror as clumps fell away until I made the decision to shave it all off. Better to control the loss than to watch it happen, strand by strand. That morning, I woke up and touched my smooth scalp, feeling the unfamiliar coolness. I was still getting used to it. Still trying to recognize myself. My son Jonathan and his wife Megan had moved into my home 3 months ago. They'd sold it as a generous gesture, wanting to care for me during my treatment, to be there when I needed help. I'd believed them. I'd welcomed them into the 4-bedroom house I'd worked 30 years to pay off, the home where I'd raised Jonathan alone after his father died of a heart attack when Jonathan was just 7 years old. I'd sacrificed everything for my boy. I'd worked double shifts as a registered nurse, saved every spare dollar, denied myself holidays and luxuries so Jonathan could have private tutoring, football club fees, a car when he turned 18, and $45,000 toward his university education. I'd paid for his wedding to Megan 4 years ago, a lavish affair that cost me $32,000. I'd done it all with love, never expecting anything in return. But that morning, as I lay in bed gathering the strength to face another day, I heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Megan walked in. She was 36, blonde, beautiful, and cold as winter steel. When her eyes landed on my bald head, she didn't gasp or look away. She smiled. "Now you're ready for the funeral, old parasite," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You look absolutely perfect for a coffin. Should we start picking out your dress?" I felt the words like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat. I looked past her to the doorway where Jonathan stood. My son, my only child, the boy I'd given everything to. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. He said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell his wife to leave. He just stood there, silent and complicit. Megan laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in my ears. "What's wrong, Patricia? Cancer got your tongue too?" Something inside me shifted. Months of suspicion, of overheard whispers, of documents I'd found in my own filing cabinet. It all crystallized in that moment. I reached under my pillow, where I'd placed an envelope the night before, after making my final decision. "Read it carefully," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I held out the envelope to Megan. She snatched it with a smirk, probably expecting some sentimental birthday letter. Jonathan moved closer to read over her shoulder. I watched their faces as they read. I watched the smirk fade from Megan's lips. I watched the color drain from Jonathan's cheeks. I watched their expressions transform from mockery to disbelief to pure, undiluted terror. This can't be legal," Megan whispered, her hands shaking so badly the papers rattled. "Oh, it's very legal," I replied, "and it's already been filed." Before I continue with what happened next, I want to ask you, dear viewer, to please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love hearing from all of you. Now let me tell you what that envelope contained and why it destroyed everything they'd been planning. The envelope contained 3 documents that would unravel everything Megan and Jonathan had been scheming for months. But to understand the full impact, you need to know what had been happening in the shadows of my own home while I fought for my life. It started 6 weeks after they moved in. I'd been feeling particularly weak after a chemotherapy session and had gone to bed early. Around midnight, I woke up thirsty and made my way slowly to the kitchen for water. That's when I heard their voices coming from my study, the room where I kept all my important documents, my will, my property papers. I stood in the hallway, hidden by darkness, and listened. "The house alone is worth $1.2 million. Megan's voice carried clearly through the half-open door. "And she's got at least $300,000 in superannuation and savings. Once she's gone, this is all ours. You're the only child, Jonathan. It all comes to you. Keep your voice down, Jonathan hissed. She might hear. So what if she does? She's dying anyway. The oncologist said if the chemo doesn't work, she's got maybe 8 months. We just have to wait it out. My blood turned to ice. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. I feel guilty sometimes, Jonathan said quietly. She gave up everything for me. Megan's laugh was harsh. And that's exactly why she deserves this. She smothered you your entire life, Jonathan. Made you feel obligated to her. This is your inheritance. She owes you this. I'd heard enough. I retreated to my bedroom, my heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. My son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd encouraged through every setback, the man I'd supported unconditionally, was waiting for me to die so he could inherit my money. But I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed how Megan began making comments about care homes. Wouldn't you be more comfortable with professional help, Patricia? We could find you a nice facility. I noticed how Jonathan stopped asking about my treatment, stopped driving me to appointments. I noticed how they'd taken over the master bedroom, relegating me to the smaller guest room so I could be closer to the bathroom. One afternoon, while they were both out, I went through my filing cabinet and discovered something chilling. Someone had made copies of my will, my property deed, my bank statements. There were printouts of real estate websites showing similar houses in the area and their sale prices. There was even a brochure for a cremation service with prices circled in red pen. They were planning my funeral before I was dead. The final piece of evidence came 3 weeks before my birthday. I'd been feeling slightly better and decided to take a short walk to rebuild my strength. I only made it to the end of the driveway before exhaustion hit me, and I turned back. As I approached the front door, I heard Megan on her phone, standing in the living room. "Yes, I'm calling about possibly listing a property in the coming months," she said. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, renovated kitchen. In Nedlands. We're expecting it to become available for sale within the next few months due to a family situation. I wanted to get some preliminary information about your commission structure and the selling process. She was calling real estate agents. About my house. While I was still alive. That night, I lay awake making plans of my own. I'd spent my whole life taking care of others, my patients at the hospital, and especially my son. But I'd been a fool. I'd raised a man who saw me as an obstacle, who'd married a woman who saw me as a bank account with a convenient expiration date. The next morning, I made a phone call to Malcolm Reynolds, the lawyer who'd handled my affairs for 20 years. "Malcolm, I need to see you urgently," I said. "And I need absolute confidentiality." 3 days later, I sat in his office, a scarf covering my bald head, and laid out everything I'd discovered. Malcolm listened carefully, his expression growing more disturbed with each revelation. "Patricia, what they're doing is morally reprehensible, though not technically illegal, since they haven't acted on anything yet," he said. "But we can certainly ensure they don't benefit from their callousness. What do you want to do?" "I want to change everything," I told him. "My will, my property arrangements, all of it. And I want to do it in a way that's absolutely ironclad. They can't contest it, they can't challenge it, and they can't undo it. That will require some creative legal work," Malcolm said thoughtfully. "But yes, it can be done. However, Patricia, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain? Jonathan is your only child." I met his eyes steadily. He stopped being my child the moment he started counting down the days until my funeral. Malcolm nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure justice is served." Over the next 2 weeks, Malcolm and I constructed what he called the most comprehensive legal protection package he'd ever drafted. Every morning, I told Megan and Jonathan I was going to chemotherapy or doctor's appointments. Sometimes I actually did. But on other days, I was in Malcolm's office, signing documents that would ensure my son and his calculating wife would never profit from my death. The first document was a complete revision of my will. In my original will, drafted 10 years earlier, everything went to Jonathan. It was simple and straightforward, the natural thing a mother does for her only child. But that will was now void, replaced by something far more complex. In the new will, I established that my entire estate, the house valued at $1.2 million, my superannuation of $287,000, my savings of $56,000, and all other assets would be placed in an irrevocable trust. Jonathan would receive only a symbolic bequest of $1. The bulk of the estate would be divided among several cancer research charities, with a significant portion funding nursing scholarships for students from single-parent families, just like Jonathan had been. But that was just the beginning. The second document was what Malcolm called a transfer of property during lifetime. Since I legally owned my house outright, no mortgage, completely paid off, I was free to do with it as I pleased. Malcolm helped me arrange to transfer the property into the trust immediately, effective on my birthday. This meant that as of my 62nd birthday, I no longer owned the house. The trust did. And the trust's instructions were clear. Patricia Young had lifetime right of occupancy. Upon her death, the property would be sold and proceeds distributed to designated charities. "This is brilliant," Malcolm said as we reviewed the paperwork. "Even if you were to die tomorrow, they can't inherit the house because you won't own it. The trust will, and trust assets follow trust rules, not will instructions. There's no way for them to contest this or break it." The third document was the most satisfying. It was an official notice to vacate the premises directed at Jonathan Young and Megan Young, giving them 30 days to remove themselves from my property. Since they'd never paid rent, had no lease agreement, and I was the property owner, I had every legal right to ask them to leave. "When do you want to serve them with this?" Malcolm asked. "On my birthday," I said. "I want them to know exactly what kind of gift I'm giving them." But there was one more element to my plan, something that required timing and courage. I needed witnesses to their cruelty. I needed documentation of who they really were. I contacted my oldest friend, Sharon Mitchell, a retired nurse who'd worked alongside me for 25 years. Sharon knew Jonathan from the time he was a child. She'd been at his birthday parties, his graduation, his wedding. She'd also been visiting me regularly during my treatment and had noticed the change in my son's behavior. "Sharon, I need a favor," I told her over the phone. A rather unusual one. When I explained what I needed, there was a long silence. Then Sharon said, "Patricia, are you absolutely sure about this? He's your son." "He was my son," I corrected. "Now he's just a man waiting to inherit from a woman he wishes would die faster." Sharon agreed to help. She would arrive at my house on my birthday morning with her daughter Rebecca, who was a lawyer herself. They would be there when I handed Megan and Jonathan the envelope. They would witness everything, and if needed, Rebecca could provide legal testimony about what she saw. The final piece of preparation came the night before my birthday. I'd been feeling somewhat stronger. The chemotherapy was actually working, and my latest scans showed the tumors shrinking. My oncologist, Dr. Sharma, was cautiously optimistic that I might beat this cancer after all, but I hadn't shared this good news with Jonathan or Megan. Let them think I was circling the drain. Let them count their inheritance money in their heads. That evening, I overheard another conversation that confirmed I was doing the right thing. I was in my room, and they thought I was asleep. Megan's voice carried down the hallway. "I saw her pill bottles in the bathroom. She's on less pain medication now." "What if she's actually getting better?" "She won't," Jonathan said flatly. "The doctor said stage 3 breast cancer is serious. Even if she beats it, the survival rates aren't great long term. We just need to be patient." "Patient?" "Jonathan, I'm tired of living in this depressed house with your dying mother. I'm tired of pretending to care. I'm 36 years old. I should be enjoying my life, not playing nursemaid to someone who should just accept her fate and—" "And what?" Jonathan interrupted. A pause. Then Megan said quietly, "And let nature take its course without fighting so hard. All this treatment, it's expensive and exhausting. And for what? To extend things by a few months? She's being selfish, making everyone suffer along with her." I pressed my fist against my mouth to stifle a sob. They wanted me to stop fighting. They wanted me to give up so they could move on with their lives. Lives funded by my death. That night, I placed the envelope under my pillow, set my alarm early, and prepared myself for the confrontation. Tomorrow, on my 62nd birthday, I would show them exactly what I thought of their patience. Tomorrow, I would burn their plans to ash. My birthday morning arrived with clear skies, Perth's autumn weather offering a beautiful, crisp day. I woke at 6 o'clock, before anyone else stirred. I sat up in bed, touched my bald head, and felt not shame, but power. I'd survived cancer treatments that would break lesser people. I'd survived discovering my son's betrayal. I was a survivor in every sense of the word. Sharon and Rebecca were scheduled to arrive at 9 o'clock. I'd told them to come to the front door and that I'd let them in. Jonathan and Megan usually slept until 8:30, treating my house like a hotel where they could do as they pleased. At 7 o'clock, I heard movement in the kitchen. I wrapped myself in my robe and made my way slowly down the hallway. Jonathan was making coffee, still in his pajamas. When he saw me, he startled slightly. "Oh, Mum, you're up early." He didn't say happy birthday. He didn't acknowledge the day at all. "I couldn't sleep," I said quietly. "Thought I'd make some tea." He nodded absently and took his coffee back toward the master bedroom. My bedroom, the one he'd claimed. I stood alone in my kitchen, in the house I'd worked 30 years to buy, and felt like a stranger in my own home. At 8:15, I heard Megan's voice, sharp and irritated, coming from upstairs. "Jonathan, your mother's probably expecting some sort of birthday breakfast. Should we bother?" "I don't know. Maybe just toast or something. Keep it simple." They came downstairs 20 minutes later. Megan was wearing an expensive silk robe. I'd seen the receipt left carelessly on the counter, $340, purchased with money they claimed they didn't have. She looked at me with barely concealed disdain. "Happy birthday, Patricia," she said with false sweetness. "How are you feeling today? Any worse than usual?" The question was barbed. She wanted to know if I was declining faster. "Actually, I'm feeling quite strong today," I replied. "Stronger than I have in weeks." I saw the flash of annoyance cross her face. Jonathan said nothing, scrolling through his phone as if I didn't exist. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Both Jonathan and Megan looked up, surprised. "Are you expecting someone?" Megan asked suspiciously. "Yes," I said. "Friends who actually care whether I live or die." I walked to the door and opened it to find Sharon and Rebecca standing there. Sharon immediately embraced me carefully, mindful of my fragile condition. Rebecca, professional in a business suit despite it being Saturday, nodded respectfully. "Patricia, happy birthday," Sharon said warmly. "We brought you flowers." She held out a beautiful arrangement of native Australian wildflowers. "Thank you for coming," I said, loud enough for Jonathan and Megan to hear. "Please come in. There's something important happening this morning, and I need witnesses." We walked into the living room where Jonathan and Megan stood, confusion evident on their faces. Megan's eyes narrowed at the word witnesses, her lawyer warning instincts activating. "Mom, what's going on?" Jonathan asked. "Why do you need witnesses?" "You'll understand in a moment," I said. I turned to Sharon and Rebecca. "Please sit down. This won't take long." They sat on the sofa while Jonathan and Megan remained standing, defensive postures already forming. I lowered myself into my favorite armchair, the one I'd bought 20 years ago with my first nursing bonus. "As you both know, today is my 62nd birthday," I began. My voice was steady now, fueled by righteous anger. Traditionally, birthdays are about celebrating another year of life, about family gathering together in love and gratitude. I had hoped, despite everything, that my son might acknowledge this day, that he might show even a shred of the love I gave him for 39 years. Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we were going to—" "Instead," I continued, cutting him off, "I was greeted this morning by my daughter-in-law, who looked at my bald head, the result of chemotherapy fighting to save my life, and told me I looked ready for a funeral. She called me an old parasite, and you, Jonathan, stood silently and said nothing to defend me." Megan's face flushed. "I was joking. You're being oversensitive. Sharon, Rebecca, you're here as witnesses to what happens next," I said, ignoring Megan's protest. "I want there to be no question about what was said or done in this room." I reached into my robe pocket and pulled out the envelope. Both Jonathan and Megan's eyes locked onto it. I held it out toward Megan. "Read it carefully," I said. Megan snatched the envelope and tore it open roughly, pulling out the sheaf of legal documents inside. Jonathan moved to stand beside her, reading over her shoulder. I watched their faces transform as they read. First confusion, then disbelief, then shock, then horror. The color literally drained from Megan's face, leaving her pale as paper. Jonathan's mouth fell open. His hands began to shake. This can't be legal," Megan whispered, exactly as I'd known she would. "Oh, it's very legal," I replied. "And it's already been filed." Jonathan sank onto the sofa, the papers trembling in his hands. Megan remained standing, her face a mask of fury and panic. Sharon and Rebecca watched silently, Rebecca's professional eye taking in every detail for potential testimony. "The first document," I said calmly, "is my new last will and testament, dated and witnessed 2 weeks ago. As you can see, it revokes all previous wills. In this will, Jonathan, you inherit exactly $1. The entirety of my estate, the house, my superannuation, my savings, my possessions, everything will be placed into an irrevocable charitable trust upon my death. The trust will distribute my assets to cancer research foundations and nursing scholarship programs. Jonathan's face had gone from pale to gray. Mum, you can't. I can, and I have, I interrupted. The second document is what's called a transfer of property during lifetime. As of today, my 62nd birthday, this house no longer belongs to me. It belongs to the trust. I retain lifetime right of occupancy, meaning I live here until I die. But upon my death, the trust will sell the property, and the proceeds, all $1.2 million or whatever it sells for, will go to the designated charities. Not to you. Never to you. Megan's expensive coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. Neither of them moved to clean it up. The third document, I continued, is a notice to vacate. You have 30 days from today to remove yourselves from this property. Both of you. All your belongings. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings and potential trespassing charges. You can't throw us out, Megan exploded. We gave up our apartment to move here. We've been taking care of you. I laughed, a bitter, harsh sound that surprised even me. Taking care of me? Is that what you call it? Let me tell you what I've discovered about your care. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. For the past 3 weeks, I've been documenting your conversations. I know about the real estate agents you've been calling, Megan. I know about your plans to sell my house before I'm even dead. I have recordings of you discussing my life expectancy like you're waiting for a stock to mature. I have evidence of you both accessing my private financial documents without permission. Jonathan's head snapped up. You've been recording us? In my own home, which is perfectly legal in Western Australia. Rebecca spoke for the first time, her lawyer's voice cool and professional. Single-party consent state. Patricia had every right to record conversations in her own residence without informing you. Megan turned on Jonathan. This is your fault. I told you to be more careful. I told you she might... Might what? I asked. Might discover that my son and his wife were treating me like an inconvenient obstacle to their inheritance? Let me share some of what I've recorded. I pressed play. Megan's voice filled the room, tinny but clear from the recording. She's dying anyway. The oncologist said if the chemo doesn't work, she's got maybe 8 months. We just have to wait it out. Then Jonathan's voice. She gave up everything for me. And Megan's response. And that's exactly why she deserves this. She smothered you your entire life, Jonathan. Made you feel obligated to her. This is your inheritance. She owes you this. The recording continued with more damning conversations. Megan discussing which furniture she wanted to keep and which she'd sell. Jonathan wondering aloud if they could contest the life insurance payout time frame. Megan's call to the real estate agent. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Jonathan had tears running down his face, but I felt no sympathy. These were tears of being caught, not tears of genuine remorse. I gave you everything, I said quietly. After your father died, I worked myself to exhaustion. I took double shifts so you could have private tutoring. I saved for years to pay $45,000 toward your university education. I paid $32,000 for your wedding to this woman. I denied myself holidays, new cars, home renovations, everything, so you could have opportunities I never had. And this is how you repay me? By counting down the days until I die? Mum, please, Jonathan choked out. We made mistakes. We said terrible things. But I'm still your son. You can't cut me out completely. That money, you earned it, but I'm your blood. I'm supposed to inherit. You're supposed to earn your own way, I shouted, surprising myself with the force of my anger. You're 39 years old, Jonathan. When I was your age, I'd already raised you alone for 32 years. I'd bought my own house. I'd built my own life. What have you built? A career you hate? A marriage to a woman who sees people as bank accounts? You've built nothing but expectations of inheriting wealth you didn't earn. Sharon reached over and squeezed my hand supportively. I took a breath, steadying myself. There's one more thing in that envelope, I said. A fourth document. Look at the last page. Megan frantically shuffled through the papers. When she found it, she read it, and her knees actually buckled. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. What is it? Jonathan asked desperately. It's an updated medical report, I said, from Dr. Sharma, dated 3 days ago. My latest scans show the cancer is responding to treatment. The tumors are shrinking significantly. My prognosis has been upgraded to very good. Dr. Sharma believes I have an excellent chance of full recovery. The implications hit them like a physical blow. Jonathan's face went through a terrible transformation. Relief, then horror, then shame as he realized what he was feeling. He'd been hoping I would die soon. And now, hearing I might survive, his first emotion wasn't joy. It was disappointment. That moment, seeing that flash of disappointment in my son's eyes, destroyed whatever tiny fragment of love I still held for him. Megan slowly lowered herself into a chair, the papers scattered around her feet like fallen leaves. Her perfectly manicured hands, nails I knew cost $95 every 2 weeks, gripped the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. This is undue influence, she said desperately, her mind clearly racing through legal options. You're under extreme stress from the cancer treatment. Your judgment is impaired. We can challenge this on grounds of diminished capacity. Rebecca stood up, pulling a business card from her suit pocket and placing it on the coffee table. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, family law attorney. I've reviewed all of these documents personally. Ms. Young underwent a full mental capacity evaluation by Dr. Leonard Chen, a court-approved psychiatric evaluator, on the same day she signed these documents. He certified her as being of sound mind, under no duress, and fully capable of understanding the implications of her decisions. That evaluation is part of the legal record. Any challenge on the basis of capacity will fail. Furthermore, Rebecca continued, her voice taking on the sharp edge of a prosecutor, if you attempt to challenge any of these legal documents, Ms. Young is prepared to file a harassment lawsuit and potentially pursue charges of financial abuse of a vulnerable person. The recordings she possesses could be very damaging in court. I'd strongly advise accepting the situation as it stands. Jonathan finally found his voice. Mom, please, let's talk about this. We can work something out. I'll apologize. We'll leave if you want. But don't cut me out entirely. The money you spent on me, I know you said you never expected anything back, but that's what families do. They help each other. And when parents die, children inherit. It's natural. It's how things work. Natural? I repeated. You want to talk about natural? It's natural for children to love their parents, Jonathan. It's natural to feel gratitude. It's natural to mourn when a parent is dying, not to calculate real estate commissions. You don't get to claim the natural order of inheritance while abandoning the natural order of love. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. Anger, I discovered, was energizing. Let me tell you about the money since you seem so concerned about it, I said. You want an accounting? Fine, let's do the numbers. I picked up a notebook I'd prepared, pages filled with figures I'd calculated late at night while they slept in my bedroom. Your father died in 1993, when you were 7. He left us $23,000 in life insurance, which I used to pay off our debts and create a small emergency fund. From that point on, every dollar came from my nursing salary. Let's start with the big expenses. I flipped through the pages. Private school tuition, years 8 through 12, $67,000. Private tutoring in mathematics and science, $15,000. Football club fees, uniforms, equipment over 10 years, $8,500. Your first car at 18, $12,000. University fees after your scholarship covered tuition, $45,000. That was for accommodation, books, living expenses, everything. Your study trip to Singapore in your final year, $5,600. Your postgraduate certificate, $18,000. Jonathan's face had gone completely blank, but I wasn't finished. Then there's your wedding. Venue hire, $8,000. Catering for 150 guests, $12,000. Photography and videography, $4,500. Megan's dress, $3,800. Flowers, $2,200. Invitations and decorations, $1,500. Total, $32,000. I paid for every cent of it because you said you were saving for a house deposit. We were saving, Megan interjected weakly. Were you? I asked. Because 3 months after the wedding, you took a holiday to Bali that cost $8,000. 6 months after that, Megan bought a BMW on finance that you couldn't afford. A year later, you needed $15,000 to cover credit card debt, which I lent you interest-free. You never paid back $1 of it. Sharon made a small sound of sympathy. Even Rebecca, professional as she was, looked shocked by the figures. But here's the real number that matters, I said. When you moved in here 3 months ago, you told me you'd sold your apartment at a loss and had no savings left. You asked to stay temporarily while you got back on your feet. Do you remember what you said, Jonathan? My son wouldn't meet my eyes. You said, "Mom, we're family. We help each other. You helped me my whole life. Now let me help you during your treatment." Those were your exact words. So tell me, Jonathan, how much have you contributed to household expenses in the 3 months you've been living here? Silence. Nothing, I answered for him. Not groceries, not utilities, not the rates, nothing. In fact, I've paid an extra $2,400 in electricity and water because you're here. I've spent roughly $800 extra per month on food. That's another $2,400. So your help has cost me $4,800, and I've received precisely zero assistance in return. You never asked us to pay anything, Megan protested. I was dying of cancer, I shouted. I was undergoing chemotherapy. I was fighting for my life. And you think I should have asked my son, who I raised alone, who I sacrificed everything for, to chip in for groceries? The fact that you didn't offer, that it didn't occur to you, that you felt entitled to live rent-free in my home while planning to sell it, that tells me everything I need to know about who you are. The room fell silent, except for my heavy breathing. The outburst had exhausted me, and I sank back into my chair. Sharon immediately got up to get me water. Jonathan finally spoke, his voice broken. I never knew you were keeping track of all those numbers. You always said it was your joy to provide for me. You said you wanted to give me opportunities. You said money didn't matter because love was more important. It was my joy, I said quietly, and I meant every word. But that was when I thought I was investing in a son who loved me, not a man who would watch me die and count his inheritance. Megan stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. The mask of the sweet daughter-in-law had completely fallen away, revealing something ugly underneath. This is insane! You're being vindictive and cruel over some misunderstood conversations. We never actually did anything. We never harmed you. You can't punish us for private thoughts. Private thoughts? I repeated. You called real estate agents. You made copies of my financial documents without permission. You discussed my funeral arrangements while I was still alive. Those aren't thoughts, Megan. Those are actions. Those are choices. We were just being practical, she shot back. Planning ahead. Maybe our words were harsh, but we were stressed. Do you have any idea how hard it is living with someone who's dying? Watching it every day? The smell of medicine? The sadness? The constant worry? The constant worry about your inheritance, you mean? Sharon interjected sharply. Not worry about Patricia. We all know what you were worried about. Megan turned on her, eyes blazing. Who the hell are you anyway? Some friend who thinks she knows our family dynamics? You have no right to be here. I invited her, I said firmly, along with her daughter, who happens to be a lawyer, specifically to witness this conversation. Everything being said in this room can and will be documented if necessary. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I've been taking notes. Time-stamped. Continue, Ms. Young. Jonathan suddenly lunged forward, dropping to his knees beside my chair. Tears streamed down his face, and he grabbed my hand. Mum, please. I know we've been awful. I know we said unforgivable things, but I'm begging you. Don't do this. Give me a chance to make it right. Let me prove I can be better. Don't cut me out of your life over mistakes. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the old maternal instinct stir. This was my child, crying, begging. I'd held this man when he was a baby. I'd comforted him through nightmares, through heartbreaks, through every disappointment of his childhood. Wasn't this what mothers did? Forgive? Give endless chances? Then I remembered the recording. She's dying anyway. We just have to wait it out. I gently removed my hand from his grip. Jonathan, if you'd said horrible things in a moment of stress or fear, I could forgive that. People say terrible things when they're scared or overwhelmed. But what you did was systematic, calculated. You and Megan made plans. You anticipated my death. You prepared to profit from it. That's not a mistake. That's a revelation of character. People can change, he insisted. I can change. Just give me the chance. I'm 62 years old fighting cancer, I said. How many chances do you think I have left to give? How many more years do I have to wait and hope that my son might decide to love me instead of my money? Megan suddenly switched tactics. She sat down, forced her expression into something resembling remorse, and spoke in a softer voice. Patricia, I know I've been horrible, truly horrible. The things I said this morning, I can't defend them. I was tired, stressed, and I took it out on you unfairly. But please understand, I grew up in a family where money was always tight. My parents struggled. When I met Jonathan and learned about your financial stability, I saw security. Maybe I became too focused on that security. Maybe I lost perspective. But that doesn't mean I'm a monster, doesn't it? I asked. What would you call someone who mocks a cancer patient's baldness? Who calls her a parasite? Who plots to sell her house while she's still fighting for her life? A desperate person, Megan replied. A flawed person, but not a monster. Monsters can't be redeemed. I'm asking for redemption. There was something almost impressive about her manipulation. She'd gone from cruel to calculating to contrite in the span of minutes, each persona perfectly calibrated to the situation. She was good. But I'd had 30 years of dealing with manipulative patients trying to get extra pain medication. I knew how to spot a performance. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and final. The documents stand. My will remains changed. The property transfer is complete. The trust is irrevocable. You have 30 days to vacate this house. Those are non-negotiable facts. However, I continued, I am willing to offer you one thing. Jonathan, in recognition of the fact that you are my son and that I did genuinely love raising you despite how it's ended, I will write you a check for $50,000. That's it. That's your inheritance, paid now while I'm alive. Jonathan's eyes widened. $50,000 was significant money, even if it was a fraction of what he'd expected to inherit. But there are conditions, I said. First, you accept this money as full and final settlement of any claim on my estate. You sign a legal document affirming that you will not contest my will, challenge the trust, or pursue any legal action against my estate after my death. Second, you leave this house within 14 days, not 30, 14, and you never contact me again. No calls, no emails, no showing up on holidays. You walk away and you leave me in peace. Mum, that's... Jonathan started. Third, I interrupted. Megan must apologize, right now, on camera. A genuine apology for the specific things she said this morning and for her behavior over the past months. Rebecca will record it. If the apology is sincere, the offer stands. If she refuses, you get nothing but the 30-day eviction notice. Megan's face went through a rapid series of expressions. Pride warred with practicality. $50,000 was real money, even split between them. But apologizing on camera, creating a record of her cruelty, this is blackmail, she said quietly. No, Rebecca corrected. Blackmail would be threatening to release the recordings unless you pay. This is offering you money in exchange for accountability. Very different legally. The room went silent. Jonathan looked at Megan desperately. Just apologize. Please. $50,000. We need it. We've got debts, and if we have to find a new place... I'm not apologizing on camera, Megan said flatly. She'll use it against me. She'll post it online or show it to people. I won't, I said. The recording will be kept securely by Rebecca as part of the legal documentation. It will never be made public unless you break the agreement and try to contest my will after my death. Then, and only then, would it be introduced as evidence of your character and intentions? 30 seconds passed, a minute. I could see Megan's mind working, calculating odds and outcomes. Finally, she stood up straight, smoothed her expensive silk robe, and looked directly at Rebecca's camera phone. Go ahead, she said. Record. Rebecca positioned herself to capture Megan clearly in the frame, her phone steady. Sharon moved closer to me, her presence a comfort. Jonathan remained on his knees beside my chair, his face a mixture of hope and shame. Megan cleared her throat. When she spoke, her voice was controlled, carefully modulated. Patricia, this morning I said things that were cruel, indefensible, and unforgivable. I looked at you, a woman fighting cancer, a woman who has shown nothing but generosity to me and my husband, and I mocked your illness. I called you a parasite. I made a joke about your funeral. There is no excuse for that behavior. I was wrong. I hurt you deeply, and I'm sorry. She paused, and I could see her struggling to continue. Pride fought with pragmatism, and pragmatism won. Over the past months, while you've been undergoing treatment, I've failed to show you the compassion and respect you deserve. Instead of supporting you, I've treated you as an inconvenience. Instead of being grateful for the home you've provided, I've taken it for granted. I've said terrible things in private conversations, things that revealed my character at its worst. I've been selfish, calculating, and ungrateful. For all of this, I am genuinely sorry. It was a good apology, as far as forced apologies went. Specific, seemingly sincere, hitting all the right notes. But I'd spent decades caring for patients, learning to read people, understanding the difference between genuine remorse and performative contrition. Megan's apology came from her head, not her heart. She was sorry she'd been caught, sorry about the consequences, but not truly sorry for who she'd revealed herself to be. Still, it was what I'd asked for, and she delivered it. "Thank you," I said simply. "Rebecca, please stop recording and preserve that file securely." "Done," Rebecca confirmed. "I'll have the legal documents prepared within 48 hours. Jonathan, Megan, you'll need to come to my office to sign them. Once signed, Ms. Young will transfer the $50,000 to your account, and you'll have 14 days to vacate the property." 14 days, Megan exclaimed. "That's not enough time to find an apartment. Pack everything." "You can afford a short-term rental with the money Patricia's giving you," Sharon interjected sharply. $50,000 buys a lot of flexibility, and frankly, you should count yourselves fortunate. If it were up to me, you'd get nothing but the eviction notice." Jonathan finally stood up, his legs unsteady. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Mum, after we leave, will you ever want to see me again? Is this really goodbye forever?" The question hung in the air. I'd thought about this moment, imagined it repeatedly over the past weeks. Part of me, the mother who'd rocked him to sleep, the nurse who'd bandaged his scraped knees, the woman who'd sacrificed everything for his happiness, wanted to say no, wanted to leave the door open for reconciliation. But another part of me, the part that had grown strong through cancer treatment and betrayal, knew better. "Jonathan, if you'd come to me 6 months ago with money troubles, I would have helped you. If you'd been honest about your financial situation, we could have worked something out. If you'd shown me love and support during my illness, I would have changed nothing about my will. But you didn't do any of those things. You made a choice. You chose to wait for me to die. You chose money over love. Those choices have consequences." "So that's it?" he asked. "All those years, everything you did for me, and it ends like this?" "No," I corrected him. "All those years, everything I did for you, and it ends like this because of choices you made. You're 39 years old. Take responsibility for your decisions." Megan grabbed Jonathan's arm. "Come on, let's pack. We'll go to a hotel tonight and start looking for an apartment tomorrow." She turned back to me with a look of pure venom. "Enjoy your house and your money, Patricia. Enjoy dying alone with nobody to care whether you live or not." "I'd rather die alone than live with people who are counting down the days until my funeral," I replied. They left the living room, their footsteps heavy on the stairs. Within minutes, I could hear them moving around upstairs, opening closets, beginning the process of packing their lives into boxes and suitcases. Sharon sat down beside me and took my hand. "You did the right thing, Patricia. I know it doesn't feel good, but you did the right thing." "I feel like I should be more upset," I admitted. "Like I should be crying or heartbroken, but mostly I just feel relieved." "Is that terrible?" "It's honest," Rebecca said, packing away her phone and legal documents. "You've been living in a state of anticipatory grief, grieving both your own mortality and the loss of your son's love. Now you're moving into acceptance. That's healthy." "What happens now?" I asked. "Legally, I mean. Can they really never contact me again?" "The legal agreement will include a no-contact clause," Rebecca explained. "If they violate it, they forfeit any future claims and potentially face harassment charges. However, Patricia, you should know, if you get sicker again, if you need help in the future, that clause works both ways. You won't be able to reach out to Jonathan either." "I understand," I said. "I have friends. I have Sharon. I have the cancer support group at the hospital. I have people who actually care about me. I'll be fine." Over the next few hours, Jonathan and Megan packed with impressive speed. Megan made several trips to a storage facility she'd apparently rented. Jonathan moved methodically through the house, gathering belongings. They didn't speak to me except for a single question from Jonathan about some tools in the garage that had belonged to his father. "Take them," I said. "Those are yours by right. They were your father's." By evening, most of their possessions were gone. They'd sleep on the living room sofas that night, their final night in my house, and finish packing in the morning. I retreated to my small guest bedroom, the room they'd relegated me to, and lay down, exhausted. Sharon had insisted on staying with me that night, worried about my stress levels and health. She made tea, encouraged me to eat some soup, and sat with me as the sun set over Perth. "Do you think he'll ever understand?" I asked her quietly. "Will Jonathan ever realize what he lost today wasn't just money, but his mother's love?" "Maybe," Sharon said. "Maybe someday, when he's older and wiser. Or maybe he'll always tell himself a story where he's the victim and you're the villain. You can't control that, Patricia. You can only control your own choices." "I chose truth over comfort," I said. "I chose justice over false peace. I chose to protect my legacy from people who saw me as a bank account. Does that make me cruel?" "It makes you human," Sharon replied, "and it makes you strong. Now get some rest. Tomorrow starts your new life." The next morning, I woke to silence. For the first time in 3 months, there were no footsteps overhead, no shower running in my master bathroom, no Megan's irritated voice complaining about something. Jonathan and Megan had left before dawn, taking the last of their belongings and leaving behind only the keys on the kitchen counter. I walked through my house slowly, room by room, reclaiming spaces that had felt invaded. The master bedroom smelled of Megan's expensive perfume, the bed unmade, towels crumpled on the floor. They'd left it deliberately messy, a final act of petulance. But I didn't feel angry. I felt free. Sharon arrived at 9 o'clock, bringing fresh bread and fruit. "I thought you might need help cleaning up and settling back in," she said. Together, we stripped the master bedroom, washed the linens, opened all the windows to air out the rooms. I moved my few belongings back into my own bedroom, hung my clothes back in my closet, reclaimed the bathroom counter. By afternoon, the house felt like mine again. 3 days later, Rebecca called to confirm that Jonathan and Megan had signed all the legal documents. The $50,000 had been transferred to their account. The no-contact agreement was now legally binding. "It's done," Rebecca told me. "You're protected now, Patricia. They can't touch your estate, can't contest your will, and if they try to harass you in any way, we have grounds for immediate legal action." "Thank you," I said, "for everything. Send me your bill." "Already sent it to your email," Rebecca replied with a smile in her voice. Though honestly, Sharon told me what happened. I would have done this pro bono just to make sure those vultures didn't get their claws into your estate. The following week, I had a scheduled appointment with Dr. Sharma. The oncologist reviewed my latest test results and gave me news that seemed almost surreal after everything that had happened. "Patricia, the scans are even better than last month," she said, genuine pleasure in her voice. "The tumors have shrunk by an additional 40%. Your blood work looks excellent. If this progression continues, we're looking at potential remission within 6 months. You're beating this." I started crying right there in her office. Dr. Sharma came around the desk and hugged me while I sobbed. Tears of relief, of grief, of gratitude, of loss, all mixed together. "I thought I was going to die," I managed to say. "For months, I thought I was dying." "You're not dying," Dr. Sharma said firmly. "You're healing, you're fighting, and you're winning." When I left the hospital that day, Perth looked different. The sky seemed bluer, the jacaranda trees lining the streets more vibrant. I wasn't dying. I was going to live. And I was going to live on my own terms, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. But recovery, both physical and emotional, isn't linear. 3 weeks after Jonathan and Megan left, I had a moment of weakness. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sorting through old photo albums. Pictures of Jonathan as a baby, as a toddler, as a young boy. Pictures of us together. His first day of school, his football matches, his graduation, his wedding day. In every photo, I was smiling at him with such obvious love. And he was smiling back, looking at me like I was his whole world. Where had that little boy gone? When had he transformed into a man who could wait for my death like it was an investment maturing? I picked up my phone, opened Jonathan's contact information, stared at his number. One call, just to hear his voice, just to know if he was okay, if he'd found a place to live, if he ever thought about what he'd destroyed. My finger hovered over the call button. Then Sharon's words echoed in my mind. You can only control your own choices. I put the phone down. I closed the photo albums. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to let them go. The hardest part of being a mother is accepting that sometimes, despite everything you've done, your child grows into someone you don't recognize, someone you can't save, someone you have to release for your own survival. I'd given Jonathan everything I had. I'd given him life, love, education, opportunities, and unconditional support. But I couldn't give him character. That he had to build himself. And he'd built something I couldn't accept, couldn't enable, couldn't reward. A month after they left, an envelope arrived in my mail. No return address, but I recognized Jonathan's handwriting. Inside was a single page, a brief note. Mom, I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I needed you to know. I got a promotion at work. It came with a significant pay increase. We found a good apartment. We're managing financially. I think about you every day. I replay that morning over and over, and I'm ashamed of who I was. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I hope your treatment is going well. I hope you're healthy and happy. I hope someday you can think of me without pain. Love, Jonathan. I read it 3 times, felt the complicated tangle of emotions, residual love, persistent anger, faint hope, stubborn protectiveness of my own boundaries. I didn't call Rebecca to ask if this violated the no-contact agreement. I didn't respond to the letter, but I didn't throw it away either. I put it in a drawer, unresolved. Maybe someday I'd be ready to forgive. Maybe someday I'd reach out. Or maybe this was how our story ended, with a letter I'd never answer, a son I'd never see again, a relationship that existed only in photographs and memories. But I was alive. I was healing. And for the first time in 6 months, I was genuinely happy. Spring arrived in Perth with the explosion of wildflowers that Western Australia is famous for. My hair was growing back, short and gray, but hair nonetheless. Dr. Sharma had used the word remission at my last appointment. The cancer was gone, or at least undetectable. I'd beaten it. My house felt different now. I'd redecorated the master bedroom, bought new furniture, painted the walls a soft sage green. I'd started hosting a weekly dinner for my cancer support group, 8 women who'd become close friends through our shared battle. We called ourselves the Survivors Circle, and we met every Thursday evening to cook together, share meals, and celebrate each week we were still alive. Sharon was there every Thursday, of course, along with her daughter Rebecca, who'd become a friend in her own right. There was Margaret, a 70-year-old retired teacher with wicked humor. There was Priya, a 45-year-old software engineer who'd beaten ovarian cancer. There was young Sarah, only 32, recovering from lymphoma and dealing with the fertility implications of her treatment. There was Chen, a 68-year-old grandmother who'd emigrated from China and spoke broken English, but whose dumplings could make anyone weep with joy. These women had become my family. They knew my story, all of it, including Jonathan and Megan. They'd held me when I cried, celebrated when my scans came back clean, and reminded me constantly that I'd made the right choice. Family isn't just blood, Margaret said one Thursday evening as we sat around my dining table. Family is the people who show up, who stay, who love you on the hard days. Amen to that, Priya agreed, raising her wine glass. To the family we choose. We toasted, laughed, and shared stories late into the night. Malcolm Reynolds, my lawyer, called one afternoon with interesting news. Patricia, the trust is performing better than expected. The investments I recommended have done well, and the property market in Perth has strengthened. Your house is now valued at approximately $1.4 million. When the time comes, many years from now I hope, the charities are going to benefit substantially from your generosity. That's wonderful, I said, especially the cancer research funds. Maybe my estate will help find better treatments so others don't suffer as I did. Your legacy will make a real difference, Malcolm confirmed. Not just the money, but what it represents. You've turned a betrayal into something meaningful. I'd also started volunteering at the hospital where I'd worked for 30 years. I couldn't return to nursing full-time. My energy levels weren't what they once were, but I could visit patients undergoing chemotherapy, offer comfort, share my experience. I knew what they were facing. I knew the fear, the pain, the exhaustion, and I could tell them truthfully, "You can survive this." One afternoon in September, I was in the chemotherapy ward visiting patients when I saw a familiar face. Megan's mother, Gloria, whom I'd met several times at family gatherings, was sitting in one of the treatment chairs, an IV in her arm, a scarf covering her head. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. Her face registered shock, then shame. "Patricia," she said quietly. I approached carefully. "Gloria, I didn't know you were sick. Breast cancer," she said. "Stage 2. I'm 6 weeks into treatment. It's hell." I pulled up a chair beside her. Despite everything her daughter had done, Gloria had always been kind to me. "It is hell," I agreed, "but it's survivable. I'm living proof." We talked for 20 minutes. She told me about her diagnosis, her treatment plan, her fears. I shared my experience, offered practical advice about managing side effects, recommended support groups. When her treatment session ended, I helped her to the waiting area where Megan was sitting, scrolling through her phone. Megan looked up and saw me. Her face went pale. "Patricia, we didn't know you volunteered here. I started a few months ago," I said simply. I turned back to Gloria. "You have my number if you need anything. Really, call any time." "Thank you," Gloria said with genuine warmth. "You're very kind, more kind than we deserve." As I walked away, I heard Megan say to her mother, "Why were you talking to her? After everything that happened?" "Everything that happened was your fault, Megan," Gloria replied sharply. "Patricia has every right to hate us, but instead, she's being compassionate. Maybe you should learn something from her." I smiled as I walked down the corridor. Sometimes the universe offers small moments of justice. That evening, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Young? This is Father Michael from St. Mary's Church. I'm calling because I've been working with a young man who's asked me to reach out to you. Jonathan Young. He's been attending services here and counseling sessions with me. He's asked if I might arrange a mediation meeting between you both. No pressure, no obligation. Just an opportunity for him to speak to you in a neutral space with me present." I was quiet for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have said no immediately. 6 months ago, the wounds were too fresh, the anger too hot. But now, "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," Father Michael said. "Take all the time you need. If you decide you're willing, call me. If you decide you're not, that's absolutely your right, and I'll explain to Jonathan that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt." After we hung up, I sat with the question. Did I want to see Jonathan again? Did I want to hear what he had to say? Would it help me heal? Or would it reopen wounds that had finally begun to scar? I thought about the letter he'd sent, the note of shame and regret. I thought about Gloria in the chemotherapy chair, being defended by a woman she'd wronged through her daughter. I thought about Margaret's words, "Family is the people who show up." Jonathan hadn't shown up when I needed him, but maybe, just maybe, he was trying to show up now. I picked up my phone and called Sharon. "I need your advice about something." After I explained the situation, Sharon was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Patricia, only you can decide if you want to open that door. But ask yourself this. Will you regret it more if you give him a chance and he disappoints you again? Or if you never give him a chance and wonder, what if, for the rest of your life?" That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was growing back in soft gray curls. My face was thinner than before the cancer, but my eyes were clear. I looked like someone who'd survived, someone who'd fought and won, someone who was strong enough to make hard choices. I picked up the phone and called Father Michael. "I'll meet with Jonathan," I said. "One meeting, with you present, and only if he understands that this isn't about reconciliation or restoring our relationship. It's about giving him an opportunity to speak his truth, and me an opportunity to listen. That's all I'm promising." "That's all he's asking for," Father Michael replied. "Thank you, Patricia. I think this might be healing for both of you, whatever the outcome." The meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I'm not going to tell you how it went, because this story isn't about whether Jonathan and I reconcile. It's about something much more important. This story is about knowing your worth. It's about refusing to accept cruelty from the people who should love you most. It's about understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. It's about protecting yourself, honoring your sacrifices, and ensuring that your legacy, the life you've built, the values you hold, isn't destroyed by those who see you only as a means to an end. My name is Patricia Young. I'm 62 years old. I beat cancer. I survived my son's betrayal. I rebuilt my life around people who genuinely care about me. I chose truth over comfort, justice over false peace, and dignity over family obligation. And I'm living proof that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most authentic happiness. Before I go, I want to ask you something. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships or reminded you that you deserve better than cruelty disguised as family obligation, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love connecting with people from around the world. Share your own stories if you feel comfortable. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always have the courage to choose yourself when others refuse to choose you with love.